What if I told you that the most common thing people do when they find rust on their metal is actually the one thing guaranteed to make the rust spread faster, eat deeper, and cost them 10 times more to fix down the road? The rust removal advice floating around the internet, the stuff passed down from well-meaning neighbors and half-read product labels, is being quietly contradicted by every corrosion engineer, every restoration shop veteran, and every old-timer who's spent decades bringing dead metal back to life. Corrosion is a $2.5 trillion global problem, and nobody in that chain is in a hurry to tell you that half of what you're doing in your garage is feeding the very thing you're trying to kill. Here's what most people miss. This isn't just about which product to grab off the shelf, it's about understanding what rust actually is, how it behaves when you intervene the wrong way, and why the methods that genuinely work have been sitting right under your nose while you've been chasing shortcuts that make everything worse. So we're doing this one mistake at a time, and right after each mistake, you're getting the exact method professionals use to fix it. So by the end, you'll have 5 real fixes, not just 5 things to feel bad about. Mistake number 5, painting over rust without removing it first. This is the single most common mistake people make, and it's the one the paint aisle practically encourages. You see rust on a railing, a truck frame, a piece of outdoor furniture, and you think, I'll just hit it with a coat of primer and seal it up. Here's what actually happens. Rust is porous and less dense than the iron it came from, so it expands, flakes, and lifts. Paint over that, and moisture and oxygen don't stop reaching the metal. They keep working underneath your fresh coat while the loose rust keeps shedding, pushing the paint upward until it blisters and peels right off. You haven't sealed anything, you've built a greenhouse for corrosion. The National Association of Corrosion Engineers has documented that unchecked corrosion can reduce the structural strength of steel components by 20 to 30% over time, and painting over active rust doesn't stop that process. It hides it while it accelerates underneath your new coat of paint. Some modern primers are formulated to bond to lightly rusted surfaces and work fine in that narrow case, but the expert consensus is the same across the board. Remove the rust, prime the bare metal, then paint. Anything less is a cosmetic fix on a structural problem. The fix: rust converters. Products like Corroseal use a blend of tannic acid and polymers to chemically transform iron oxide into ferric phosphate, a stable, inert compound that doubles as a paintable primer. You don't strip the rust, you neutralize it in place. For heavy rust on truck frames, trailer hitches, and fencing, a rust converter is the fastest path because it transforms the rust into a stable surface instead of forcing you to strip every flake by hand, and it requires minimal surface prep before you apply it. Mistake number 4, using bleach to clean rust. Bleach is the go-to cleaner for seemingly everything: stains on the counter, mildew in the bathroom, discoloration on fabric. So when rust shows up, the instinct is to reach for the same bottle, and that instinct will cost you the piece of metal you're trying to save. Bleach contains sodium hypochlorite, an oxidizing agent, and rust is oxidation. Iron plus oxygen plus moisture equals iron oxide. Pour bleach onto rusted metal, and you're literally adding a chemical oxidizer to an oxidation problem, accelerating the exact reaction that created the rust in the first place, and you'll watch it bloom across the surface in real time. Bleach also strips away any residual oils or coatings that might have been slowing the corrosion down, removing the metal's last line of passive defense right along with whatever rust it appeared to lift. The fix: a plain white vinegar soak, and nowhere near metal for that bottle of bleach again. The acetic acid in common white vinegar is acidic enough to dissolve rust without oxidizing the metal further. Soak the piece for 12 to 24 hours, scrub with a wire brush, and rinse thoroughly. The key is rinsing completely afterward because vinegar left sitting on the metal can damages the surface over time, the same way any acid left unchecked eventually will. The fix: a plain white vinegar soak. The acetic acid in common white vinegar is acidic enough to dissolve rust without oxidizing the metal further. Soak the piece for 12 to 24 hours, scrub with a wire brush, and rinse thoroughly. The key is rinsing completely afterward because vinegar left sitting on the metal can damaged the surface over time. If this saved you from making a rust problem worse, be sure to like and subscribe. Mistake number 3, using hot water to flush rust stains. This one is sneaky because it feels so logical. Hot water cleans better than cold for grease and grime, so the reflex when you see a rust stain on clothing, concrete, or any other surface is to hit it with the hottest water available, and that's the exact moment you lock the stain in for good. Heat causes iron oxide particles to bind more deeply into fibers and porous surfaces, making them dramatically harder or impossible to remove afterward, while cold water keeps the stain loose and sitting on the surface where you can actually treat it. Every fabric care guide and every restoration manual says the same thing: cold water first, always, with rust. This applies to concrete and stone too. Flushing with hot water drives the iron oxide deeper into the pores of the material, instead of lifting it out where a treatment can reach it. The fix: naval jelly applied cold, on metal specifically, Products like Loctite Naval Jelly contain phosphoric acid at concentrations between 10 and 30%, and that phosphoric acid interacts with iron oxide and transforms it into iron phosphate, which wipes right off with a cloth. Dwell time is 5 to 10 minutes, up to 15 for heavy rust, never longer, since prolonged contact causes pitting in the metal underneath rather than just cleaning the surface. For rust stains on fabric or concrete specifically, treat with a cold, acid-based rust remover or diluted lemon juice, then rinse cold, verifying the stain is fully gone before any heat ever touches it, since even a warm rinse at this stage can undo the work you just did. Mistake number 2, scrubbing too aggressively with the wrong tools. Here's what nobody tells you about rust removal: harder is not better. When people see rust, something primal kicks in. They grab the most abrasive thing in the drawer, a steel wool pad, a coarse wire wheel, a grinding disc, and go at it like they're trying to punish the metal for rusting in the first place. On fabric, that grinds iron oxide deeper into the weave while tearing the material apart. On metal, overly aggressive abrasion removes not just rust, but good base metal, creating scratches and divots that trap moisture and become new nucleation sites for corrosion, giving rust more places to start all over again. The goal was never to attack the rust, it's to separate the rust from the metal without damaging what's underneath, and brute force does the opposite of that every time. The fix, chelation-based rust removers, used as a soak instead of a scrub. Evaporust works through selective chelation, a process where a synthetic molecule bonds exclusively to iron and iron oxide, but is too weak to pull iron from solid steel. It's self-selecting, removing rust while leaving good metal completely untouched, and it operates at a near-neutral pH of 6.1 to 7, gentle enough to soak parts in rather than scrub them raw. 1 gallon handles up to 300 pounds of moderately rusted steel. Light rust clears in 5 to 30 minutes. Heavy rust takes up to 24 hours, and afterward the steel may darken slightly. That's carbon migrating from the steel, a natural byproduct of the process, not new damage you need to worry about. Once the soak is done, a light pass with a brass brush finishes the job without ever needing the steel wool or the grinder, and the part comes out with its original dimensions intact instead of thinner and scratched from an afternoon of scrubbing that made the problem worse than the rust itself ever would have. If any of these mistakes sounded familiar, subscribing means you won't miss the fix for the next one. Mistake number 1, ignoring rust and delaying treatment. This is the mistake that costs more money, destroys more metal, and ruins more projects than every other mistake on this list combined, and it requires zero effort to commit. You just do nothing. You see a small spot of surface rust on a wrench, a bike chain, a truck rocker panel, a set of cast iron cookware, and you think, I'll deal with it later. That thought has cost the world $2.5 trillion a year in corrosion damage, according to the NACE International Impact Study, which put the cost of corrosion at 3.4% of global GDP. In the US alone, the direct annual cost is $276 billion, and between 15 and 35% of that could be saved just by using corrosion control practices that already exist, methods identical to the 4 you just heard about. Rust is not stable. Iron oxide is less dense than the iron it came from, so it expands, cracks, and flakes away, exposing fresh metal to oxygen and moisture, and each layer creates the conditions for the next one in a self-feeding cycle that accelerates over time. A spot of surface rust you could have knocked off with a wire brush and a drop of oil in 5 minutes becomes a pit that compromises structural integrity in months, simply because nobody got around to it. The fix, electrolysis, and urgency in general. Electrolysis uses electrical current to convert iron oxide back into pure iron, which reattaches to the metal surface instead of just being scraped away and discarded. Mix a tablespoon of washing soda per gallon of water, attach the negative lead to the rusty piece and the positive lead to a sacrificial electrode, usually a scrap piece of rebar or angle iron, and let the current work overnight. The process is self-regulating. Once the rust is converted, it stops, and it doesn't eat into the underlying metal the way an acid soak left too long can. It's perfect for hand tools, antiques, and frozen bolts, where preserving the original surface and dimensions actually matters. Perform it outdoors since it produces hydrogen gas, and never use stainless steel electrodes, which can produce toxic hexavalent chromium compounds in the process. But the real fix underneath all of this is simply timing. Act the moment you see rust, pick whichever method above matches the job in front of you, and once metal is clean, protect it immediately. Flash rust can begin forming within minutes in humid conditions, which means even your fix needs a fix if you let freshly cleaned metal sit bare too long, so have your primer, oil, or coating ready before you even even start the cleaning process, not after. If you made it all the way to the end, you've just learned something most people never will. The biggest threat to your metal isn't the rust itself, it's the wrong response to rust, or the delayed response, or no response at all. 5 mistakes, 5 fixes, each one built to stop the exact damage its matching mistake causes: converters for painted over rust, vinegar for anything bleach would have ruined, navel jelly for stains, hot water would have set, chelation for anything you'd otherwise be scrubbing raw, and electrolysis paired with speed for the rust you were about to ignore. None of these methods require professional equipment or a chemistry degree. They require knowing which one matches the job in front of you instead of reaching for whatever's already in the garage out of habit, which is really the whole difference between a 5-minute fix and a project you end up redoing twice. Remember, sometimes the best rust removal method isn't the most expensive product on the shelf. Sometimes it's a tablespoon of washing soda and a battery charger sitting in your garage right now, waiting for you to plug it in. If we saved you time or money on your next rust project, we'd appreciate it if you subscribed and left a comment about which method you're trying first, or which mistake on this list you're guilty of right now. Your result might help someone else pick the right fix instead of reaching for whatever's already under the sink out of habit.